the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 234 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Bexon. Sorry I missed last week's one, guys, just running around like a headless chicken between the US and also some of our projects here in Costa Rica, but I promise that that'll be the only one that we'll miss this year. Today, we're going to be talking with Dan Chaput. We've had him on before from Costa Rica Private Loans, a company that offers private loan servicing for people looking to purchase a property or release some equity from an expansion or buy another property or many other reasons, actually. I like Dan because, he's a straight shooter and no BS, so it's great to get kind of his viewpoint, especially what he's seeing happening out there in the market from a loan perspective, but also a pricing perspective here as well. As we know, I think there's some settling happening in the market here. Still pretty active in 2025 here, but we are still seeing some, I would say, non-key kind of area properties start to actually reduce in price. I see a lot of price improvements, even the word fire sale thrown around. We're actually looking at 2 bits of land at the moment, one in Osara and one in Tamarindo. But there's a ton of opportunity out there, and that's why I love this. I love it when we're on a bit of a slight downward trend. I saw something the other day from Larry Graciano from Coldwell Bankers that was saying that they expect 2025 Q1 to be like 2024. I said to him, look, I think you're going to be about 8 to 10% down just based on what we're seeing here. But we'll see at the end of Q1, we'll give a bit of a wrap up and maybe we'll get Larry on and we can kind of talk about that. But yeah, anyway, let's get straight into the podcast with Dan. Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Hey, Richard. Good morning. What's going on?
Just running around like a headless chicken like normal, but all is good, man. All is good. But again,
last time I saw you, you were in the airport and they lost your luggage. Did you ever find it?
I did actually. Yeah, no, they delivered the luggage. So I'm back in the airport again on when am I back in the airport? On Sunday again. So I just seem to be all over the place at the moment. But appreciate you taking time and just kind of sharing your market insight. I love it because it's like no BS. And I think that's what a lot of listeners here, are looking for, is kind of like not the rainbows and unicorns that sometimes we might get from some people in real estate, but just kind of the reality, of kind of what's happening here in Costa Rica so that they can just make an informed decision. So thank you.
You're very welcome. We lenders tend to be a little bit on the pessimistic side. We're very cautious. We're pessimistic. We're always looking for what's wrong with the deal. So, it's good to have an optimist and a pessimist and see both sides.
Definitely. Well, there's been some volatility in markets. I don't think that's going away anytime soon, Dan, to be honest with you. I think we might have that for the next couple of years, but we'll see. What are you seeing generally happening in the market here in Costa Rica?
I think it is a welcome change going back to normality.
Yep.
And it's not just Costa Rica, right? We saw, just because of, global financial policy and a lot of different things that have happened over the last 4 years, prices of all sorts of different assets and sometimes non-assets just go absolutely nuts. I don't know if you recall back in 2021, the price of used boats was going up. There was just madness in all sorts of places. And people were making a lot of money in very stupid ways very quickly. I more welcome a normal market where you actually have to do a good job, provide value, and can have a good long-term vision and, think 10, 20 years down the line and not worried about all this noise because of strange market conditions.
Yeah, look, I think there were very easy ways to make money over the last couple of years. I don't think that's going to continue, which is good because, again, I suppose it's kind of like Darwinism of only the healthy will survive. But as you said, you need to deliver value.
Yeah. So, absolutely need to deliver value these days. So I think people like you and me who really focus on that, it's great for us.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think we're in a buyer's or a seller's market at the moment?
You're not going to like my answer. Neither. I think there's a disconnect.
Yep.
So there's a couple different things. Just like the US, right? So, if it's rural Indiana or if it's downtown Miami, those are 2 different markets. We have different markets here. We have the city market, we have rural markets, we have tourist markets, we have beach markets. But overall, I think there's a general disconnect in the sense that there's not all that much value. So new buyers are coming in to real estate, or new investors looking for something that can provide them appreciation, cash flow, right? And there's not a lot of pricing. A lot of the pricing is sort of beyond where there's a reasonable amount of those things, appreciation, cash flow. People still want to sell at unreasonable prices, which for anybody who can do basic math, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think it's why people like you build, is because you see, if you know what you're doing and you have the right people, you know that the value is in building yourself and not trying to pay ridiculous premiums that other people are asking.
Yeah, and I think that's probably going to stay for the next couple of years, Dan, before maybe, a few people, because a lot of people have been building at the current exchange rate, which is really expensive. So for them to exit their investment, they're probably gonna have to take a haircut at some point, if that makes sense, because it's not continuing up.
Correct.
And I don't know whether people are willing to do that, and that's the thing.
Yeah, but overall, as we mentioned value, we've mentioned buyers and sellers markets, and we also mentioned long term. People, especially sellers, need to understand the price that the buyer comes in at needs to make mathematical sense.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I say it to all people all the time. I'm like, look, don't invest based on asset appreciation because you've got no idea where that's going. Like, that's kind of gravy. Invest based on cash flow if that's your reason for investing. If it's purely lifestyle, don't worry about anything. Like, it's not an investment, guys. Don't think about it. Like, I'm here to enjoy it and be like, it's going to give me a 10% lifestyle return, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Don't mix those two things up because it's going to get very complicated otherwise. Because if you're trying to make an emotional decision and backing up by logic, okay, there might be some logic there of like, okay, if we're going to rent it, be like, okay, there's some logic there and we can take a look at that and then its value and its cash flow. But like, if it's like, no, we don't want to rent it, we just want a place, but like, I don't want to, pay over market odds or like, I want to make money when I sell it. It's like, well, nothing is ever guaranteed on that front, guys.
Right.
So anyway, we'll see. I mean, where have you started to see, I would say, any biggest price movements in real estate in Costa Rica, Dan?
Up or down?
Yeah, either way.
So one of the types of loans that we do, so what we tend to focus on, we're hard money lenders, right? Or private lenders. A private lender takes an asset that already exists, a home, a building, an Airbnb, a boutique hotel, whatever it is, and we loan based on that asset. One of the things that people are asking for loans for is they say, hey, I have this for sale. I put all my cash into it. I don't have much cash flow. I need to pull some of that cash out while it sells. So we monitor a lot of those, and very few have sold across price points. So we have a gentleman, he was trying to sell a nice, well-built, smaller home, 100, 120 square meters for like $250. He sat on that thing for a year right outside Tambor. And at the high end, we have another gentleman who's got a beautiful house right smack in the middle of Nosara that he's dropped $1 million off the price, 5-bedroom, 5-bath, ocean view, center of Nosara. And he's sitting on that as well. I think he's got it listed with everybody. So I think the major price movements that I'm seeing with my customers and also a lot of the alerts that we get from realty companies is price reductions. I absolutely see asking prices going down.
Yeah. Are there any particular markets that you're seeing that in, though? You mentioned Osada there. You mentioned Tambor. I mean, Flamingo got pretty high at one point.
I would say, yeah, Flamingo, Nosara, Santa Teresa, all the ones that, people were asking $5,000 per meter and up, I think you're coming back to normalcy.
You know where I've not seen, and again, I'm biased on this, I have not seen price, should I say, adjustments in Manuel Antonio.
So you've got a different situation there because it's so limited. There's so little for sale. It's such a small contained area.
Yep.
You can't grow or expand like Coco or Hermosa or Flamingo all the way out to Bahia de Piratas, and Nosara can expand out to Playa Grande and to Junquial and Playa Negra. All those can sort of grow out. Manuel Antonio, you kind of can't.
It's like a mountain top.
Yeah, so it's like the Manhattan effect, right?
Yeah. I kind of answered a bit of the question here, but I mean, which markets do you think will stay strong and why?
Yeah, I mean, those beautiful areas, and stay strong. Um, if you can be affordable and within a reasonable distance to a hotspot, um, so right outside of Flamingo is beautiful. Right outside that is Potrero.
Yep.
Potrero, the last several years, has had reasonable prices in places like Surfside. You can go up the mountains. It can expand out. The prices have gone up, but they're still reasonably priced areas. So if you can keep growing at a reasonable rate, I think the prices will remain stable. Or places like Manuel Antonio, where it's limited building.
Yep.
Anytime that there's a lot of new inventory that comes on, you're replacing old inventory, and the prices can go down, like what happens in the Central Valley. So a lot of houses in the Central Valley don't maintain their prices very well, because you get new apartments, new condos, and something that's just 10 years old now all of a sudden is less desirable. So we don't really get much appreciation.
That's my biggest concern with HACO, Dan. It's like I look at that and go, okay, the number of available properties there is probably going to double over the next coming years if all these projects just keep happening.
Yeah.
So what's that going to do to real estate prices? What's it going to do to, rent, cash flow rentability? Like that is the market that has me most concerned in Costa Rica, just because I think it's going to grow as quickly, really fast.
Your data is better than mine. We've both been here a long time. I have non-specific, data. I've just kind of, general trends that I've seen over the years is over time, it seems that new construction prices will settle back to their replacement value. And this is how we value a lot of our loans as well. So people say, hey, I've got a market value of $1 million. I'm like, I'm looking at the land, I'm looking at the structure. I know that it costs about $500,000 to replace it.
Yep.
So a property is only worth a small amount more. I say 10%, just to put a round number on it. And that's just a premium for not having to build it or take, the risk in building it. It's only worth a built structure is only worth a little bit more than its replacement value, because long term, those are the two options that a buyer or an investor is going to have. Do I build or do I buy existing? And when you compare those prices, if the existing is so much drastically more, you're just not going to do it if you're a numbers person.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I was chatting to, one of the realtors in HACO, they would tell me that, like, look, it has a strong local market as well, which it does. It's a different beach market than some of the other areas of Costa Rica, because there is a strong local market and a strong local ownership there as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, we saw Uvita, increase ridiculously. Uvita and Cahuita are the areas that we've seen the biggest increase in, I say vacation rentals coming on board. And that's going to be interesting to figure out what happens in those markets, because I know the hotels are suffering in Uvita because there has been such an increase in the vacation rental market.
Yeah, but they're building pretty quick down there as well. We've gotten a lot more clients down there, and there's plenty of area to where they can expand out as well. They can go up the mountains, they can expand out into Ojochal and a little bit beyond.
Yep.
So those will settle out as well. It'll still be a good market because it's a nice area to live. It's that jungle, it's that vibe that a lot of people like. They'll still be fine, but prices will adjust.
Okay. I mean, Dan, for anyone that's listening to this, that's thinking about financing options in Costa Rica, what's available terms and rates? I mean, just give us an idea of kind of how all that works.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we do hard money or private lending, which is short-term loans from individuals. We cost more than a traditional bank loan because we're short-term, because it's negotiable. We can, kind of change up different ways that it's done, different ways that you pay it down, the amount of time, all those other things. We are in line with US rates. We're cheaper than Canada right now. So a short-term loan, private, will be right around 12%.
Okay.
A lot of people, when they think of home financing, they think of 15, 20, 30-year mortgages, which is a different product.
Yep.
And they're for a different purpose as well. So I was competing for a loan just yesterday, actually, with somebody. They want to pay down a loan quickly, but they said, hey, look at the rates in Lafice. And so I'm having to change some of my rates and terms to make it more favorable against Lafice. So actually, I saw some of those numbers here recently. Second homes, I think they're starting at 8.5%, 9%. Then they adjust after a couple of years. They'll have a 5-year interest guarantee or penalty period, so you can't pay it down in excess before those 5 years. Most people don't care, but if you're an investor, which is what most of my clients happen to be, they want to pay it off in a year or two. They don't want 5. They'll have a 5-year payment penalty, but then they're all adjustable, right?
Yeah.
Fixed rate, they're only going to be fixed rate for a few years, and then they're going to adjust either to LIBOR, to the 3-month interbank rate, and they're probably going to settle around 9.5% to 10% long term, kind of depending on what interest rates do. But I'll just stay in that range to be conservative. So I would say buyers should count on a long-term average rate over 15 years, probably in the 9.5% to 10% range.
But also, I mean, we're dealing with different things. I mean, you guys could probably execute on a loan pretty quick. La FISE can take 2, 3, 4 months, depending on what it is. I mean, I've been through it with a client before, and it's a very complicated process.
It is. Yeah. And speed is part of it as well. When people are racing against the rainy season, I've done $500,000 in 10 days before, several times.
Yep.
And so for a lot of people, that's very valuable. Yeah. So we compete on speed as well.
Yeah. And I think it just depends. I mean, you guys aren't loaning on new builds, if that makes sense. Someone finds a piece of land and wants to build, you're not loaning on that, right? You're loaning on like it needs to have windows and doors, if I'm correct.
Right. So it's got to be a completed, legal, livable structure. So our requirements are windows, doors, roof, electrical. Okay. Now, sometimes, and a lot of our loans as well, everybody's going over budget these days, by the way. It's not, all those listeners who are out there, they're like, I'm so dumb, I can't believe I went over budget. I have very good, smart, data-driven Excel people who are going 10, 15% over budget, and it's not you, it's the suppliers and other factors. But so a lot of times people just, landscaping and interior. And so they need a kitchen, they need furniture, they need a lawn, a pool, all those other things. So we'll loan a couple $100,000 right at the end, as long as it's safe for the lender. A lot of our lenders are low risk retirees. This is their retirement money. They've got a couple $1 million, but $200,000, $300,000 is still a big deal to them. So we have to make sure that it's safe. And so if it's open, if it's exposed, if there's a way that they can get stuck with an incomplete structure, it puts their retirement funds at risk. So we have to make sure that it's safe for both the borrower and the lender. Yeah, I mean,
we're getting a few things here of people like, hey, I want to get a loan to buy a house in Costa Rica. I mean, that's not really you, but I mean, I think their options are going to be like Banco La FISE, owner financing, which is sometimes owner financing is kind of a new thing for people. They're not used to it, especially in North America, because banks are so open for it. But here, owner financing, I've owner financed stuff before.
I have too, yeah. Owner financing is okay, but owners, a lot like are essentially private lenders on a small scale, and they don't want to do it really long term.
Correct.
So the two that we refer to all the time are La FISE and CCS Mortgage in Uvita. You know Gabriel down there. So we refer to him as well. I think he's got multiple bank contacts, and those are the two who we've had good experiences with. I'm sure there's others out there. If you're residency, you can go to a lot of the different banks. But for non-residents, that's who we generally refer to.
I'm starting to see a few things about, malinvestment, unsavory characters. I got a few comments on our podcast I did the other day.
Yep.
About developments and investing in Costa Rica. What advice would you give to people to make sure that they're not, that they're interacting with someone that is responsible and knows what it is that they're doing?
I think a lot of that can be solved with time. You got to give it time to where the excitement wears down, and then you've got your head on straight again.
Yep.
You should be able to know exactly what you and I are talking about right now. What land costs are, what construction costs are. You need to be able to understand, or at least have people that can go into the registry, look up all the information, confirm things, credit checks, things like that, and really understand how the system works. It's sort of like, would you start a restaurant? People do it, but, would you start a restaurant without having any restaurant experience and, never really having cooked professionally or anything else? The people who tend to be successful really know what they're doing, that have experience in the past, they've done their homework. And the same thing goes for Costa Rica. Take your time, learn, take a year, rent, buy nothing, learn all about it. Take your weekends and, go to all the different towns and, be professional about it, gather data. And then from there, you'll be able to sniff out who's honest and who's not. You, for instance, it's going to be really hard for anybody to be able to say that you are a shyster. It's obvious by your transparency. You speak Spanish, you've been here a long time, you've got, a podcast, you've got multiple companies. It's pretty obvious.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's, this is a beautiful place, but I remember the saying when I first got here, Costa Rica is a sunny place for shady people sometimes. So it's not as bad as it used to be. That's for sure.
Correct. It is not as bad as it used to be. You and I both remember 20 years ago, there was a lot of, people hiding from the government.
Yep.
There was a bunch of the Viejo Verdes, right? They would come down here and there's prostitution was all over the place and a lot of gambling and just these sort of just nasty, shady characters. Now the new folks are not like that. The new folks are, young Canadians with families, Europeans, Americans as well. And they have different characteristics, but, not nearly as much shadiness now as in the past.
I mean, it still exists, but I think you have to do that. You just got to do your homework and ask around. I mean, typically, when someone's been here a year or two, it's probably not long enough to know kind of them. I mean, they have to have been here probably beyond 5 years, sometimes even more. I mean, if someone's been here for 10, 20 years, I mean, like everybody knows them, if that makes sense. You can just kind of ask around. And I always say in Costa Rica, ask 3 people. If 2 people give you the same answer, typically it's the same, the same thing. But if you get 3 different answers, keep going.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's something that people need to remember as well in Costa Rica is your livelihood, much of the time, is based on your reputation. It's such a small place.
Correct.
Even if you look at just raw population of, about 5 million people, but when you're in the expat population or the North American, Canadian, European expat population, that's a relatively small number. That's only a couple 100,000 people. So it's basically like living in a small town. Everybody knows who Jim, Bob, and Mary are down the street with the cattle farm, and everybody knows who owns the corner store. And if somebody's an unsavory character, you're exactly right. A lot of times you just need to ask around.
Yeah, and you'll find it. It's amazing how, I mean, they call Costa Rica as like a pueblo, like a town. I mean, everybody does know everyone.
100%.
So, well, Dan, I've kept you long enough here, but my last question, which I love to ask, and you've answered before, but like if you inherited $500,000 and you had to invest it in a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you invest it in and why?
I almost want to repeat my answer from last time because I don't think anybody heard it. I'm going to answer your question with a question. How many places have you seen that have well done electrical? How many good electricians do you know in this country?
Very few. I'm having electrical issues in my yurt at the moment because the electrician was, anyway.
There are electrical issues everywhere.
Yep.
If there were a great bilingual electrician or hire a great bilingual electrician and you can start small, relatively small with your $500,000. You can get a couple trucks. You can have some people, make sure that they're well-trained, and you have a high-quality branded electrical service company that provides some sort of service guarantee, something like that. It charges more, but it really checks a lot of the boxes with Costa Rica. So I think there's a need. There's a lot of people that overprice their services and products. So you could fairly price them. You could do it in volume because there's so many houses here with poor electrical. There's so much going up and there's almost no competition. So you've got margin, you've got volume, you've got need, you've got very little competition, man. And it's got longevity as well. You and I are talking about the people who made money fast. A good high quality electrical contractor that's branded and well managed will last decades and could make millions in revenue.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've had Alex Stripe on here who does home inspections before. I said, Alex, we can never inspect septic tank systems. And he's like, Rich, it's really difficult to do unless you've got cameras on rods. And I was like, invest in cameras on rods and send them down and you'll figure out. So we did. And the other day inspected a septic tank system for us, and roots were growing into the septic tank system. And we're like, well, we've got an issue here, if you know what I mean. Yep. Whereas beforehand, like nobody inspects septic tank systems here.
Yep.
They take a look at it, they take the lid off and go, yeah, it's kind of working. We don't see any issues, but like they're not sending cameras down there.
Yep.
So yeah, I completely agree with you on the electrical side. I mean, and I think that's where Costa Rica is starting to go, but we're seeing a lot of expats kind of come down here and bring their trades with them as well. And bring those standards, which I do think will, kind of raise the tide here in Costa Rica.
Yeah, if I had the time, I would probably, I know nothing about electricity, but at the same time, if you study really hard, you could probably figure out the basics in a couple months.
Yep.
There's so many people that want to come down here. Imagine you hire a master electrician from Florida or Texas, one of these places has a bilingual Latino guy to train up a bunch of other people.
Yep.
And then a few trucks and, several months you're off to the races. As long as you maintain quality control, do marketing. I think that's a really good business that could make somebody a lot of money.
I think you'd be very busy very quickly.
Yep.
Well, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you as always. Anyone that wants to contact Dan, all of his contact details are in the description down below. But very much appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, sir.
Thanks very much. Great to talk to you again. Hope to see you again soon.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks, Richard. Bye.
Great podcast there with Dan, guys. I think you can see he's just a straight shooter, looks at stuff in a very logical way. And it's always great to get his viewpoint because he's at that lending age, which is kind of the lending kind of stage, which is kind of sometimes towards the end and it's not at the beginning, which is nice to kind of just see what's happening there. Because I think that's really dictating as we get new buyers in the market, kind of where it is. I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting year this year. There's going to be some, I'd say buckets of cold water for some people. For others, it's going to be great. I do love Dan's advice there, which is just take your time, guys, and really kind of ask about when coming, as you would do anywhere here. You just have to understand there is not much recourse in Costa Rica. As they say in Latin, caveat emptor, buyer beware. It's the one thing I remember from law classes. It really applies here. Because once you buy a property here, like you've bought it, anything that came, like you should have done your due diligence, thoroughly. So, I mean, and again, this is where we kind of come in of like, we are a pain in the butt, not to you, but to whoever it is that you're buying from, investing in, building on, because we just are very overprotective of our clients when we work with them. So, I mean, if anyone's looking to do anything here in Costa Rica, it can be relocate, buying land, build. We do financial analysis, like, there's not much that we haven't done. I mean, we've been here for like 20 years, so know it very well. Our engineering team, I think Eric's probably done 30 years of construction here. Our junior project manager probably has had about 15 years of construction experience. So it's a very, I would say, experienced team that's seen probably everything. So email us info@investing Costa Rica. That's info@investing Costa Rica. All of our contact details are down in the description down below. But I do believe that you're going to need good advisors going forward more now than ever, just because, again, the market is changing. But with that becomes a lot of opportunity. As I said, we're looking at investments currently at the moment, just because we're seeing that opportunity in the market at the moment as well. So again, contact us info@investingcostarica.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, guys. We very much appreciate everybody, all of your support. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. But till the next podcast, we'll see you later. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.